going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mind and Mateo. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold or something, so it might sound a bit nasally this episode, but we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. I wanted to talk about risk versus reward, And before we dive into it, I want to do what I kind of always do, which is look at the definitions on dictionary.com and see what each means. So dictionary.com says that risk is the exposure to the chance of injury or loss, a hazard or dangerous chance. Once again, risk is the exposure to the chance of injury or loss, a hazard or dangerous chance. Reward from dictionary.com is something given or received in return or recompense for service, merit, hardship, etc. Something given or received in return or recompense for service, merit, hardship, etc. You might say, Mateo, why are these two things important? Because I am exceedingly learning that life is all about risk and reward, or it's a major dynamic. I won't say it's all about, but it's a major dynamic in life. And that's in everything. That's in business, that's in relationships, that's in you name it. There's always risk and reward in friendship, in family, whatever it might be. There's always something that you're risking, and there's a reward to be gained. And I'm at a point in my life right now where this rings very true. It's something that is becoming more apparent, and the people who are most, I guess you could say, most successful in life are very good, have a very good gauge of risk versus reward. They're able to see something and know the boundaries of what are the risks and what is the reward that I'm going to be gaining. And they make a decision off of these variables, whether to move forward in an investment or move forward in taking an action or doing something like that, or making an acquisition or something. And so if that is a major precursor to success, if risk versus reward is something that shows is done by highly valued people, is that's what they're good at, is risk versus reward, then, and to me, in my mind, it's something that we should focus on. It's something that we should look at. And the question becomes, how do we get better at it, right? And the short answer for that is, if you don't have to skip through the whole episode, it's experience. It's experience and taking your knowledge, converting it into wisdom and working through things. But it's through making mistakes. It's through making successful decisions. It's through navigating and experiencing through things, because you can learn everything that you want from a textbook, but until you actually go through the nuances of it in real life and see the things that you can't, I guess, quote unquote, be taught, you're just not going to know what you don't know. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm thinking about risk versus reward, and I wanted to look at how I can convey some of my personal experiences and put it in a form that could help you. And I think that the number one thing about risk is inevitable. It doesn't matter what you do in life. There is some kind of risk associated with it. And so I used to be someone who looked at something like, I remember at one point, before I got into my first house, the mortgage was a risk. I said, man, that's a lot of money to be on the hook for. And it's a big responsibility. It's a big risk. Same thing with my first car note. It was a big risk, big responsibility. Same thing when I bought my first car cash. I pulled I think it was like 7 or 10K or something like that. It was a big risk. It was a big chunk of change for me at the time because I was younger. And, everything that you do in life has a risk. The question is, do you know what the associated risks are? Do you know how far they go, how big they are, and what is the reward? And does the reward obviously outweigh the risk? Because that's what is going to end up driving your decisions of whether you should go and make the decision or not. And the key is, if you can mitigate the risk and you can maximize the reward, you are willing to take opportunities because you understand that the risk is going to be minimal as far as the decisions that you make and the opportunities that you choose, but the reward is going to leapfrog you. And as you start to stack those rewards, you get so far ahead in life, and there will always be risks. You always run the risk of losing it all. We'll talk about that in another episode. But you start to see how those rewards and how they stack and how it just slingshots you so far ahead in life. And so I say the first and foremost thing is you need to know what your level of responsibility is. That is going to be key, because the level of risk that, somebody who's living at their house, who's 17 years old and they don't have a career yet, and, they have no financial responsibility, they could take bigger risks. You have to still be careful, but somebody who's young and has no financial responsibilities or relational responsibilities, you could take massive risks. You can go and do something for a year, 2, 3 years, and have it fail tremendously and still be okay, right? Because you still have a lot of time in your life. And doing that is actually going to be pretty good, because even though you may have, I'm not saying you will fail, but I'm saying if you did fail, you would learn more in doing that, and it would leapfrog you ahead so much further than people who haven't done that. And so, that's one thing. Like, are you right now a 17-year-old, 18-year-old person, whatever, 15-year-old, 16? Are you at your house? You got no career, you got no financial responsibilities. You want to be looking at the high reward stuff. And if it comes with a little more risk, that's something that you might be willing to take. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. And disclaimer, I'm not giving any financial advice. I'm just not. But this is just some tips that will hopefully help. But are you single, and maybe you have a pretty decent career, maybe you make decent money, and maybe you have an apartment or something like that, and you can take a little more risk than somebody who's married, right? Or who has kids or whatever it might be. Just, or are you married and, you've got a mortgage and whatever. You just got to look at your level of responsibility, because, a lot of people will say you got to risk it for the biscuit. Well, you don't want to risk it for the biscuit if it's going to take your house, or if it's going to wreck your marriage or anything like that. You want to know what kind of the restrictions to play, and what are the rules of engagement that you can play in without wrecking your life, because you don't want to do that. It's not worth it. And so, once you've looked at what your level of responsibility is, there's 3 things that I do immediately upon looking at an opportunity. A lot of people start with risk. I don't start with risk. I start with reward. What is the reward? Is it going to be worth my time? Because I don't care what the risk is, if the reward is not going to be worth it. If something is low risk and it's low reward, but it's easy to do, hey, maybe I'll do it, because you can stack those small wins. But what is the reward? Is it something that I'm looking for? Am I going to buy a cabin for Airbnb? What's the reward? Is it going to be, $20K a year? Is it going to be $50K net a year? What is it going to be? Am I going to put time into this relationship, to make it further and deeper? What's the risk, or what's the reward? The reward is, this is my family member, and I've always wanted a deeper relationship with them. And even though we run the risk of fighting or something like that, I think the reward is better. So I always look at, what is the reward? Is it something that I really want? Is it something that's worth fighting for or risking for? Second, obviously, what is the risk? This one, the reason why I start with reward first as well is because if I start with risks, I usually talk myself out of a situation. If I start with the reward and I start looking at what are the possible rewards from this thing, and how does the opportunity also relate with some of my previous wins and some of my goals and aspirations? Do they synergize well together? But as I start to do that, if I look at the reward first, I'm more likely to kind of be level-headed about it. Whereas if I look for the risk, I start finding everything that can go wrong, and it really doesn't matter what the reward is, because I've already outweighed it with kind of this fight or flight survival instinct, right? So then I start looking at the risk, and I start saying, what are all the things that could go wrong, and how bad could they go wrong? Like worst case scenario. I never best case scenario anything. I always worst case scenario it, and I make my decision based off of the worst case scenario, because what can go wrong will go wrong a lot of times. So always worst case scenario it. If I go again, like, buy this cabin for Airbnb, what's the worst case scenario that can happen? If my reward is, let's say it's 50K net, well, what's the worst case scenario, and what are all the risks? And do I feel like, let's say if everything were to go horribly wrong, do I feel like that 50K is worth it? And does it make sense on paper? If it does, there may be a chance that I move forward with it, a good chance that I move forward with it. If not, it doesn't matter how good that 50K looks. I'm not going to risk my family, my wife, my kid. I'm not going to risk my house over it, right? There'll be a different opportunity with a little better risk reward assessment, right? And then the last thing, number 3, is what am I missing? People get themselves, and I put myself right in that category of people, get themselves in trouble because they get overly excited or they get overly scared of the risk. But the question is, what are you missing? What don't you know? Because what will come and bite you on the ass is not always what's in front of you. It's the things that you have failed to research. It's the things that you don't know. I keep using the example of Airbnb because I'm looking at obviously getting into Airbnb and doing that whole thing. And so learning about this whole venture while I'm building my IT company and getting into real estate in that area, there's a lot to learn. And I was looking at a property, and excuse me for swallowing all the time. It's just still getting over the cold. But I was looking at a property, and I was looking at the numbers, and everything looked pretty solid. And I started looking into the zone classifications and everything like that. And I wouldn't make this mistake not knowing, but it's something that could have really been bad. I love the property. Everything looked good. It looked like it was going to cash flow really great on paper. It was going to bring like 50, 60K net, whatever it might be. But then you look at the zone classification is zoned R1 in this particular state that I'm looking at. And R1 in that state means no short-term rental properties. So if let's say you're looking at a property like that and you're in the same situation, and you go and you put an offer on that place and you start to close and you just don't know about the R1 zoning, well, guess what? You looked at the what you saw were the risks, you looked at what you saw was the reward, and what bit you in the ass was the part that you were missing, which is you just didn't go deep enough. You didn't go a few levels deep. And when you went, you peeled the layer of the onion back a little bit, you would have seen that you just bought yourself a second house. And you could illegally rent it, but legally you might find yourself in some issues with the town or the city or whatnot. And there goes your investment, and now you're tied into a second mortgage or whatever it might be, or your capital's tied up, and that's how it goes. So what is it that you're missing? What is it that you don't know? More times than not, any of the really kind of sticky situations that I've been in my life were the part of what I was missing and what I didn't know. And another example of this is, because I've done this many a times, I've learned not fast enough from my mistakes, but hopefully you'll learn from them. But I bought a Mini Cooper. I was like, I'm looking for a little beater of a car. This was years ago, like 2-3 years ago. I bought a Mini Cooper. I said, I've always wanted a Mini. I got money for a little bit of a beater. I just need something good gas mileage that will get me around town. Well, I didn't know Mini Coopers take super. So they take 93 premium, right, for gas, which is a little more expensive. I mean, they do better on gas, but hey, I could have gotten another car that just takes regular gas and a little bit cheaper on the wallet. I didn't know insurance was a little bit higher because it's a Mini Cooper. Who knows that the insurance for Mini Coopers are going to be a little higher, right? And then not only that, I went to school to be a mechanic. I'm not a mechanic, but I like working on cars, and I got my degree in that. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I'll spin a wrench myself. I'll save a little bit of money, do all that kind of stuff, do oil changes, change all that kind of good stuff, right? Come to find out, because the Mini Cooper is so small, it is a pain in the butt to work on a Mini Cooper, at least in my opinion. Maybe there's somebody out there that's better than me, but in my opinion, it's a pain in the butt. Everything is so cramped. Half the time I got to take the whole front end apart just to do one or two little things that should be very simple. And it's this little thing that I saw, hey, the reward is good enough. I've always wanted to drive a little Mini Cooper and have fun and spin the thing around and drift it and whatever. And the risk, I didn't do enough risk assessment, right? And so not only did the risk that I saw come to fruition, but all the things that I didn't do research about, all the things I didn't know came and bit me in the ass hard. And that's how it goes. That's another example. I've got a really big example coming up in a two-part episode coming real soon. But the last thing I want to put on, right? So we talk about what is the reward? 2, what is the risk? 3, what am I missing? What I don't know, or what don't I know? And then I guess the last bonus tip that I'll give you is know that doing nothing is also a risk. That is very important, because a lot of people will think that doing nothing is safe. Doing nothing is not safe. It's almost like currency where, having money in the bank is good, but having money in the bank can also be bad. What do I mean by that? Having money in the bank is good when money is worth something, but having money in the bank is bad when the value starts to become, the inflation starts to hit and your money it's just worth less. You know what I mean? So it also is, it becomes very apparent as things start to happen in life. So don't feel a lot of, and I put myself in this category. Again, I'm those people. But you just got to know that doing nothing is a risk. It's not safety. It's not going to protect you. It's not a safe zone. You don't want to do nothing just because you think it's safer than doing something. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's not. You're putting yourself at a risk. And the issue is that you don't see and you don't feel what that risk is and what the repercussion of that is. You always have to be doing something, moving into a certain direction, because stagnating and staying in one place, I'll give you an example of this. When this hit me hard when my dad got sick. I thought before that happened, life is dandy. Everything is going good. I'm hot stuff. I just got married. I'm in that phase of my life. We just got a nice little condo. Everything's going good. Me and my wife are making good money. We're making enough money that, after all of our expenses and even spending a little bit of money, we're socking money away at a good rate. Our nest egg is growing pretty fast. And my dad's sickness hit. And when that hit, I looked at all the opportunities I had to grow, all the opportunities that I passed up on, that I felt were too risky, that I didn't do my due diligence. And in that moment right there, it hit me. I had many opportunities to do more, to improve more, to go get more certifications, to further my career further, to do all these different things. But because I didn't, because I decided to play it, safe, because I decided not to take action, because I was afraid of the risk or whatever it might have been, I'm now in a situation where I'm behind the 8 ball. I'm now in a situation when I couldn't help my dad financially, or my family financially. I'm in a situation where now I'm tied to a job. I can't be there for my family because I have to go work to make sure I'm making money to pay bills and everything like that, right? I had to do my part. And so looking at that situation, I looked, and that's where I came up with, doing nothing is a risk as well. Because the truth of it is, you're going to get opportunities in life, right? And you're not guaranteed those opportunities again. You're not. The opportunity might very well come and go, and then you never see it again. And so the question is, are you prepared to take on that opportunity? And do you know the difference between a good opportunity and a bad opportunity? Or, a high reward, low risk, or medium risk opportunity versus a high risk, low reward, or something that's not worth you risking it for the biscuit. You know what I mean? And so, again, 1, what is the reward? 2, what is the risk? 3, what am I missing? What don't I know? Bonus tip, Doing nothing is not safe. It is a risk as well. I hope this has helped you guys. I love y'all very much. Have a good one. Until next time.